late December, and I'm hanging out with Bobbi Ann Brady, MPP, Haldeman Norfolk. I want to, if you don't mind, could you do a quick overview of your year 2022? Like, it's like a movie. Like, it's crazy. Your life has just been. How do you, when you look back now, are you like, oh my goodness, what a year?
Yeah, it's hard to believe it's only been, like 1 year because there's so many things. Like I'm convinced that I could cram a book someday with just what's happened in the 9 months. And when I say 9 months, it was the end of April, I think around April 27th, that I decided to throw my hat in the ring for the provincial election. And man, the blessings that I've had since then, I mean, I've had heartache and I've had challenges. But as I said in my maiden speech when I got to Queen's Park, is we're in an area where we believe in blessings in disguise. And I think that we've talked about this on this podcast before, is that, what happened in April, when Doug Ford decided that he was not going to allow me to run in a nomination, it was heart-wrenching. It was heartbreaking. I cried a lot, tears of anger, tears of frustration. But at the end of the day, I have ended up in the most amazing place that I could be, and that is an independent. And I give all that credit to the people of Haldeman Norfolk. We defied the odds here. And when I took my seat in the Ontario legislature on August 8th, I had a lot of people who said to me, like other members, and of course the media, right from the day I was elected, how did you do it? Well, I didn't do it. Nearly 17,000 people did it. They went to the ballot box and they did something, and I'm like a broken record with this, Dave. They did something that was courageous. They did something they were told never, ever to do. And man, that takes a lot of courage. And that'll be a chapter alone in my book someday, because I believe that that's the most fascinating political science story there is. And we hadn't seen that since 1905. So, people say to me, isn't sitting as an independent lonely? Reporters have asked me that. Isn't it lonely? And I understand why they ask me if it's lonely, because there's been times where I stand in the House and I ask a question or I say a statement, and, I kind of get people looking down at their desk and they don't clap. And you know what? That's a good thing. It's because they know I've called them out on something and they can't make eye contact and they'll get in trouble if they clap. And, that's not lonely. That's liberating.
I got to ask too, when all this shook out in March, April, when all this is going down, how was your self-confidence at the start? When all this happened? I think my perception of you, it's probably changed you, and it's probably made you a little harder. What you went through is not easy in any form. So talk a little bit about that, the emotional crisis, and maybe just how it's made you a better person.
I hope it's made me a better person, in all aspects. I know it's made me a better listener. It's given me a greater appreciation for all of the people around me. They all bring something to the table, whether, there were people who brought things to the table for me in the early days that were not positive. That's also something that you can learn from. And I think as a female growing up in the boys' change room back in the day playing hockey, I learned a lot of things from the boys when I played hockey, and I learned how to be resilient. And I think it set me up for a really good political life. And I've been a very determined person for a long time. My parents will tell you that. I was a determined toddler. I was a determined teenager. I'm still very determined today. I'm not always everyone's cup of tea. But when I decide to do something, I do it because I honestly think that I can do it, not because I just want to prove a point. And people have asked me that, again, reporters, did you do it just to be, a thorn in their side? No, I did it because I felt like it was the right thing to do. It was the honest thing to do. And I did it because I really, really wanted to win. And I wanted to win for the people of Haldeman Norfolk because I didn't want them to have a bad deal. So, when I look back at the end of April, and I, through May and into June 2nd, it's very surreal because I just took one day at a time. I'd get up and I was just, in my own space. I'd get up, I'd walk out that door, and I would just give her all day long. I would just do what I thought was the right thing to do. And, there were challenges. My campaign team would come to me, or my campaign manager would come to me. And, one day he says, Bobbi, we're not going to have data. And I said, what do you mean we're not going to have data? He goes, well, you're not a political party. You don't have a privacy policy. I said, well, what the hell? Write a privacy policy. Well, no, we're in the 11th hour. They've just told us. And we literally have an hour. And I remember saying to him, Jeff, that's fine. We'll still win. We can still do this because people believe in us. And I became a more positive person, I think, because I felt like if we honestly believed we could do it, then that spirit would be contagious. And it certainly was, and I've used the line multiple times since June 2nd, courage can be contagious. And I hope it continues to travel this country because we certainly need more courageous people. I'm not saying that I'm courageous. I'm saying the people of Haldimand Norfolk were courageous. I don't know. It has changed me. This year has changed me significantly, but I honestly think that I've been changed for the better. And I was at the Jarvis light up on Friday night, and there was something in the fireworks that made me kind of emotional. And I think it was looking at all the people, Lisa Nye and her husband Howie, and all these fantastic people standing there who love our communities. They love our small towns. And man, if they can put that kind of effort into making people feel good at Christmas, then, as somebody who's been chosen to represent the people of Haldimand Norfolk, then you know what? I've got to get up every single day and do my very best for them. So I've been blessed with this opportunity, and I certainly don't want to disappoint anyone. I mean, politics, you can't be everything to everyone all of the time. Mike Harris taught me that. Love or hate Mike Harris. That is the one thing that I took away from the Mike Harris years is, you can be the best representative, you can be the best person, but you're not always going to make everyone happy. But I certainly am going to try my very hardest to, make the majority of people happy.
Yeah, you got to get Lisa and Howie. You got to give them a shout out. They're great people. I know them very well. They're excellent.
Yeah. And there are Lisa and Howie's in every community.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah.
And I am getting the opportunity to meet them all. I was in Dunnville yesterday for a Trillium announcement at True Experience, and the great work that they're doing there. They have now a pantry where they actually bring people in to the kitchen at True Experience, and they're teaching people how to cook with, I'll use the old-fashioned term, dry goods. Lentils, and they're teaching them how, to go to the market and buy fresh produce and, make a pot of soup or a stew. And I mean, that seems so simplistic, but there's so many of us nowadays who just live off of convenience foods, and because they've never been taught and they don't understand the health ramifications that actually, living off of those convenience food can have for them. So, there's these great volunteers in Dunnville who are ensuring that community, is kind of getting the education with food. The stories are endless. And over the past few months, I've been very blessed to see so much of this good work and these good people in our community, and businesses. There's so many unique businesses. I've toured a lot of them. And I hope over the next few years I get to tour all of them. We have very creative people in Haldimand Norfolk who are doing amazing things, and their work is traveling all around the world, and we don't even know it. It's right in our backyard.
Yeah, I know.
We don't know this.
It's crazy.
So,
was there any one point, and this is my last piece on the election, was there any one point or one person, constituent, that said something to you and it just resonated and you knew that this was a possibility? Was there any any one of those old timers or something that just said something that just it crystallized it for you? Was there any of those moments?
Yeah, there was a few of them, but there was one person in particular. I won't say his name. I would love to say his name, but he would be really embarrassed and he'd say, "Why did you do that?" And he has been a political friend of mine for a long time. His dad was very, very influential within PC circles for a long time locally, local business owner. And, of course, I had discussions with Toby, and said, like, I know how we're going to do this. And I said, I'm going to run as an independent. And Toby said, well, you're crazy. Yeah, I might be crazy. But Toby's approval, number one, was of utmost importance. And he said, you might be crazy, but I'm with you. Let's do this. And then there was this other fella. And I thought to myself, what if he says this is a cockamamie idea, right? And I was expecting him to say it was a cockamamie idea. And I went to him and I said, here's the deal. I said, we're in a bad spot here. And I know that you bleed blue. But what do you suggest? And I didn't tell him that I was thinking about running as an independent. I wanted to know what he would suggest. And his words to me were, run as an independent. And between Toby and this guy, I knew that that's what I had to do. I knew that it was the right thing to do. If this guy who bleeds blue and Toby who bleeds blue are saying that it's the right thing to do, then I knew that. And then, of course, when I threw my hat in the ring and all of these messages came through and social media was kind of exploding for me saying, hey, we are behind you. And that just made getting up every day a whole lot easier. That made the tough days easier. When I did all candidates nights, which were really daunting because I had no platform. Everyone else showed up there with their party platform. Bobbi Ann's platform was made up of what I had garnered over 23 years that was important to the people of Hallam and Norfolk. But I also wanted to present policy that was still true to what I believed in and was fiscally conservative. Maybe on the social side of things, I wasn't as conservative, but fiscally I needed to stay true to my roots. So that was my struggle with respect to all candidates nights. And, as much as I love to talk, all candidates nights are a bit scary, especially for your first round, right? I've always been in the background, helping Toby prepare. And Toby was a master at debating. And I was a bit terrified, I'm not going to lie. And after the first one and people coming up to me saying, wow, it was cooler. I remember being in the parking lot and a gentleman came up to me. He says, oh, Bobbi Ann, I'm not sure there's going to be a lot of people here tonight. It's a nice night. Farmers are in the field. Cars started pulling in and cars kept pulling in. And one of the Haldeman Federation of Agriculture members said to me on the inside, he says, there's all these people are here to see you. And I said, they're here to see me. And he says, yeah, he says, the majority of us, he says, we're convinced that you're the right way to go, but we're here to actually, make sure that we're making the right decision. So he says, there's a lot on your shoulders tonight. And I was scared stiff. And after the fact, he gave me the thumbs up on the way out. And he says, I think you sealed the deal. And that set me up nicely for the next debates where I had the confidence to go out there and repeat my messages and just be me. And so as much as he scared the Whitakers out of me that night, he also, he also gave me that confidence moving forward.
That's pretty cool. And we can skip ahead to election night and it's going to be a tight race. I know you were probably out doing, I think you told me you were doing something else that evening, but
I was watching hockey.
Yeah, you were watching your son play. And then you get these
first spring game. And I said, yeah, let's go.
Was there, and election day how did you feel going into that? Were you confident? Did you say, yeah, this is mine? Or were you just like, this is going to be close?
I think I went through moments of both where I was like, you know what, I've done all I can. And I've I've left no stone unturned. And, regardless of whether or not I win, I've proven a very important point. But I think, honestly, Dave, my thought was I was cautiously optimistic. I was optimistic I was going to win, and I was starting to prepare what I was going to say to the media if I did win. I knew what I was going to say, if I were to lose, but I started putting more emphasis on figuring out what I would say when I won. And that verbiage was what I kept telling my campaign workers. I said, don't talk about if Bobbi Ann wins. Talk about when Bobbi Ann wins, right? The power of positive thinking. And so I thought to myself, on election day, if I don't believe it, how is everyone else going to? So I got to a point where I was like, yep, I'm going to do this. And my oldest, she called it right from the get-go. She was like, you've got this. And I said, and she was so nonchalant about it. She goes, you have this. And I said, I don't know anything, right? I guess at the end of the day, I was cautiously optimistic, and but it was still until that final call is made. You're on pins and needles, and I remember that night very well. I remember being in the vehicle with my kids. And it's a moment I'll never forget.
And that's, that was the start of it. That was day one. Then next thing you know, you're sitting in the house and you're getting up to do a speech. That's got to be another moment that you'll never forget. I mean, that's you representing us saying your piece. And I thought that, I know you and I talked about this before, but that's got to be a tremendous moment as well. Like, I mean, you've had so many highlights, and then to stand up in the house and say, you're speaking for all of Norfolk. And I thought that was, I saw that and it was really cool. That's excellent.
My inaugural speech. So the premier, I finally had an encounter with the premier just before Christmas, and it's because he did something very classy. Actually, he printed my inaugural speech on some really nice paper, and he signed it, and he put it in a folder, and he left it on my desk in the house. So I went over to thank him for it, and we were both trying to kind of get words of season's greetings into each other, Christmas greetings into each other, and the bells were ringing. And if you're not in your seat by the time the bells are done ringing, you kind of get in trouble. So anyway, I thanked him and I shook his hand. But that inaugural speech, is something that meant a lot to me. I put a lot of time and effort into that because I wanted to thank, and I wanted to talk about the people in my life who have given me the confidence to enter politics and do the things that I have done for years, starting from when I was a child. My parents, my brother, Toby, my kids. And in that speech, I asked members of the Ontario legislature to consider doing things differently. I described the cynicism. I described that, what happened in Haldimand, Norfolk was, it was the continuation of the erosion of democracy, and that I was there to defend democracy. And I asked them to do politics differently. And there were a lot of folks who came to me afterwards and said, you're right. We need to do things differently. And it's funny because just before Christmas, the Lieutenant Governor, the Honorable Elizabeth Dowdeswell, showed up to give us kind of a Christmas message and to give royal assent to a bunch of bills. And one of the things that she asked us to do is to reflect on our rights and our privilege of being legislators, and to look at how we are defending democracy. And I just thought it was brilliant. I thought this was fantastic. And so that's the opening of my first New Year's column, that's coming out next week. And I thought that was fantastic that she reminded us that we have a very important role to play in defending democracy. So good on her for reminding all of us. She didn't need to remind me, but there are some that need to be reminded.
I gotta ask too, because I know Sam and Jeff that work at your office do a lot of work, and maybe tell the folks, like, as independents, they're busy. Like you guys are pulling, they're pulling the weight. There's no party backing you guys. So could you spend a second and just, I think it's important that we know, right? Because they're hardworking folks that work alongside you.
Absolutely. And I was in the grocery store yesterday picking up some things for dinner, and I got stopped by a farmer who said to me, I just want you to know that I've been dealing with Sam and she's fantastic. And I get that all the time. I get stopped all the time. And that is the best feeling, knowing that people are well taken care of. When I did that for so many years, I made sure people were taken care of. I made sure that people were largely happy with Toby by the service that I provided. And again, you can't make everyone happy, but you want to make the majority happy and you want to do the very best for them. And I have 2 people in my constituency office who go above and beyond every single hour to do the best for the people of Haldimand, Norfolk. I also have a communications advisor in Toronto, Mike, and he looks after me well in Toronto, making sure that I get to my committee meetings on time, making sure that I have all the necessary, paperwork that I need for committee, for in the House. He basically just keeps my head on straight and keeps me pointed in the right direction. So between the 3 of them, I am very fortunate because I would say I have some of the hardest working staff in Ontario because we're not backed by a caucus services that support us. So all of our research is done by us. We don't have somebody that we can turn to for the answers. We've got to find them ourselves. So these guys are incredible. And I would say to the people of Haldimand, Norfolk, that if you reach out to my office and you don't get a response within a timely manner, please reach back out and call again, because it means something went awry. Because they call everyone back. They answer everyone's email. But, technology is technology. And there are times where emails go missing, where they get, junked, or, our answering machine messes up and we have no idea that it's messed up. So please always reach back out before you go on social media and say terrible things about my staff, because they are wonderful people.
What's 2023 hold for Haldimand, Norfolk? Can you can you tell us about any of your goals or your aspirations for our community?
Mm-hmm. So I've kind of chunked it into January and February at this point in time, because January is going to be extremely busy. I sit on the finance committee, and we are traveling the province through January and February on pre-budget consultations. So we are going to places like the Sioux Lookout and places that are much colder than Norfolk County. And so we'll be traveling doing that, and that will be a great opportunity for me to hear. I hear from our local businesses, local hospitals, local, educators on what things look like here. I suspect that is right across the province, but I will be able to hear from probably hospital boards and CEOs elsewhere across this province and understand what kind of financial pressures they're facing. I think that'll be really good for me to hear. It'll also give me an opportunity. I am, as I said, a fiscal conservative, and I don't find that this government is always being fiscally conservative. So this will give me an opportunity to hold the government to account, that we shouldn't be spending money like drunken sailors, that we have responsibilities and we have priorities. First and foremost, our healthcare system and our economy. People tell me continually that they can no longer afford the necessities. This isn't about, hey, I can't buy Christmas presents and the wants. This is, I'm trying to choose between paying a bill and putting food on the table. Which one do I pay? So, my New Year's wish for everyone is that we see some of those financial pressures for our families here alleviated. It's tough watching people struggle in this way. I hope that we can get the housing market under control. I met with some real estate folks last week, and the average cost of a home in Norfolk County in 2022 was $830,000. Who on earth can afford $830,000 in Norfolk County? It just makes me so sad, because now I know there's so many people out there now who probably have a mortgage for a home that's $750,000, $800,000, and in a few years that home is not going to be, worth near that amount of money, and yet their mortgage is still going to reflect that $750,000, $800,000, and it's terrible. We need.
It looks recession-like, and with rising mortgage rates, it doesn't look pretty for 23 early on. I'm hoping none of that comes, but back to your point when you were saying about down in Dunnville, exactly. Folks are looking at how they can save $1. You know what I mean? If you can, like you said, get back to basics, you've got to do it in order to save some money. You just can't afford to live.
Absolutely. And, you're right. It looks recession-like, and the economists have said that the beginning of 2023 is going to be rough. I just hope that as we round out 2023, that things start to look better, some folks. And, I've been watching on social media the past few days a situation in Simcoe where people are describing this young boy, maybe 20 years old, and they've seen him hanging around dumpsters and hanging around Sobeys, and he's looking for things, and he's very polite and, seems to have his head on straight, but he just says there's been some tough things happen. And people have reached out to me, and I say, we can offer folks supports, but sadly, I regret to tell these people that we're going to see more of that. And, we just hope that our community can pull together and try to help as many people out as we can. But we are going to see more of it, unfortunately, because we aren't going to rebound. The calendar isn't going to turn and we're going to all of a sudden be magically better. It's going to take some time, and we're going to see some painful things. So I just ask the community to be kind and help out where they can. I know it's tough when everybody's struggling, but my hope and my wish is that the end of 2023 will look much better, and that when we're sitting down at this time next year, Dave, that we're a little more optimistic. But we're blessed because we are in small towns, and we tend to look after our neighbors a little more than not knowing our neighbor living in a city. So
you were saying earlier too about sitting on the finance committee. Will there be, when you guys are done, will there be a report back to the government?
Well, the final report will be the budget.
Okay. So, all right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So those
I just meant when you're out there and observing, you're going to see things, I know that'll affect you emotionally. Like you're going to want to help right then and there. So, if you're able to say, hey, wait a minute, guys, like we got to take care of this. This isn't cool. I just wondered if there's a report that goes forward first. That's all.
Yeah, and I'll write about my travels with the finance committee. It'll be something that we can talk about next time.
For sure.
And then I will be writing about my travels and what I hear in those travels. I will have the opportunity, probably after the committee meeting's done, is to go up to that delegation if I feel that there's something that I can offer to them or advice. We will have the opportunity to go speak to them. We also have, kind of a question and answer period. Once delegation is finished, we have the opportunity to question or speak to that delegation. So you're right. The helping nature in me will probably be more upset on these trips than feeling positive. But it's all part of the process, and it's all part of the challenges that I've been afforded, and I'm up to the job. And luckily, there are people out there who care, and that's how we move forward, and that's how we'll get better.
My last question, I know I'm keeping you a long time today, but I want to talk about your last article and the gun regulation situation federally. It's an interesting piece. I really enjoyed it, but you were talking about the distraction of it all. Can you elaborate on that for the folks? Maybe tell them what you're talking about.
So I want to lead with the fact that not everybody loves that column. Not everyone, enjoys it. I've gotten a few calls. I've gotten many, many calls, and I've got many, many comments from people who are like, thank you very much for saying what nobody else has, kind of the will to say. But I have gotten a few who say no guns are never a good idea. And that's fine. You can have that thought. But it is a distraction. Every single time Justin Trudeau or I would say that the left brings forward the gun debate, it's because there's something that they don't want us to pay attention to. And I won't get into the federal politics. I think most people know what the federal government doesn't want us to pay attention to. But this is a common sense issue for me. I'm not a gun owner. And I said that when I stood up in the House. I said, listen, I'm not no gun-toting Bette Dutton here. I don't come from a family of hunters, but I do know so many people who fill their freezer, and I appreciate that, and I'm actually envious of that, because those are some of the people who are spending a lot less on food these days because they can feed themselves. And feeding yourself, during difficult times is always good. So this is common sense for me, and I told the House that if government actually brought forward policy that would curb gun crime and prevent the gangbang shootings that we see in our cities, I'd be the first to stand in my place and vote in favor, because, one life lost is one too many. I get that. But it's not our hunters, it's not our sport shooters, guns, who are shooting up downtown Toronto. And telling people that they're going to fix this problem by bringing in ineffective legislation is false security. And whether people agree with guns or not, it is false security. It looks good as a little ticker on the 6 o'clock news saying we're going to crack down on gun crime. Well, it hasn't worked. The tactics so far have not worked. And John Tory and the chief of police in Toronto have also said that this approach is wrong-headed from the federal government. And we're seeing gun crimes committed, and they basically the criminal gets a slap on the wrist and away they go, and they're back out there securing another underground gun the next day, and back at it. So we've got to crack down on what we see in the justice system. Those are the things we have to go after. Doug Ford has gone after the feds on cracking down on the number of guns, coming in from the U.S. illegally. I suggest that that's what Doug Ford and our Solicitor General continue to do, is press the feds to clamp down on that. But that's not a distraction. What Justin Trudeau is doing right now is a distraction from some very big issues. And it makes no sense to go to your door and say, as a police officer, this is the whole crux of why I asked at the provincial level, because what Justin Trudeau is asking provinces to do is to help him. So use your police forces to go, confiscate guns from legal owners. And that's not a good use of police resources. That takes our police off the streets, who are, maybe dealing with domestic violence cases, dealing with opioid issues, dealing with robberies, whatever the crime is in the community. It's taking police off the street and using them in a very ineffective manner. I've also spoken to a lot of police who say, I won't do it. I simply won't do it. I'm not going to go door to door and ask a legal gun owner if I can see what's, in their safe. Right? And it makes no sense. And it's time that the federal government go back to the drawing board. It's time Ontario says, listen, Justin Trudeau, we're not going to help you with this very nonsensical policy that you're trying to put in place.
You're not going to go hunt deer in the middle of Toronto.
No.
It should be categorized. There should be different categories for where you live and what's that expectation in that area. Mm-hmm. Because you're right. I mean, I got to be honest with you. I was totally against banning every type of weapon I could think of. And the more over the years, as I grew older and understood, my dad was a hunter and understood that, I began to appreciate it and understand it. But I often wonder too, it's like, okay, how do we find the balance here? And I think you're totally right on this. There's got to be a different system. You've got to look at where these folks live. You're not going to go into an indigenous community and start telling them they can't hunt or fish. I think that's, you got to look at it realistically, and nobody's actually took the time to do that. And that kind of bothers me. It's what you said. It's the criminals. Okay, let's lock this down. Let's figure this out. But
in fairness to the Solicitor General, he's a great guy, Michael Kersner. He's a great guy. We had a conversation. He thanked me for asking him the questions. And I know there was he took a lot of heat on my Facebook page and on my social media because people believed that he didn't answer the question. Well, he didn't answer the question of whether or not he was going to tell Justin Trudeau no. And that's what I am going to continue to press him to do. He admitted that criminals are the problem, that our legal gun owners are not the problem. So if you honestly believe that as the Solicitor General, then it's time to tell Justin Trudeau, no, we won't help you. Other provinces have, right? Other provinces have told Justin Trudeau, not a chance we're going to use our police resources to go ask legal gun owners what they have in their safe. So it's time that Ontario does the exact same thing. And encourages the feds to come up with policy that will actually make a difference, but leave our legal gun owners alone.
Do you think it'll ever boil down to the province being able to make those decisions? Do you think it'll all change enough that Ontario, Alberta, each province would make their own gun registry regulations? You know what I mean?
It could. One province, I think it's Saskatchewan, has actually come up with a number of policies that would actually make it near impossible for their police to go door to door and ask for these things. That's what Ontario needs to do. Or they all just need to band together and say, no, you know what, this looks good on the 6 o'clock news, but this gives people a false security. And that's show and sham politics is never good. And this is exactly what it is. And it's a distraction from some of Justin Trudeau's failures.
I think you're right. I think we definitely got to look into it more. Maybe that's the way it has to go. It has to be provincial, because I think then you've got territories that are major hunting areas that need to be left alone and protected. One rule does not fit everybody on this one. There's no way.
I was heartened after my question. There were a few members of the legislature, and I won't say from which party because it would be kind of singling them out, but they stopped me and they said, can you explain this to us? And we don't really understand what's going on, which kind of scared me a little bit, that they didn't know that Justin Trudeau was asking the provinces to participate in the buyback. So I stopped, and these are folks that, don't have an appreciation for guns. They don't have an appreciation for hunting just by where they are, geographically located. And so I gave them a bit of an education as I left the house that day. And you could see that the wheels were turning. And I said, look, one member had stood up that morning, Mitzi Hunter, and she had talked about in her riding of Scarborough Guildwood, how she had been to a school where kids fear they're going to be shot at school. That's terrible. And I said to her, I said, of course I want policy that makes kids feel comfortable and safe at school, but this is the wrong way to go about it. And this will do nothing to keep those kids safe at school, because those guns are still coming in from the U.S. underground. And I'm hoping that by me speaking up, by me having these side conversations with people, that they do their own research into it and go, okay, you know what, Bobbi Ann has, she's, they don't have to admit I'm right, but, she's onto something here, and we actually have to come up with policy that works.
Should the Hunters and Anglers Associations be involved in this, obviously? I think that's the other part of this that I'm missing is, I think they probably have a good idea on how to regulate this as well. Mm-hmm. And invite them to the table, have those, even if you're doing it at a provincial level right now, invite them to the table, have those conversations and see where this can go, rather than waiting till something bad happens. Like you said, we need to get rid of the guns that are coming into our country. Yeah. Because
you've hit the nail right on the head, Dave, because that's what much of Justin Trudeau's policy is. He is only going after the left-wing anti-gun folks. So his policies are based on what they say. When you develop policy, you bring everyone to the table. Right. You bring experts, people who, are deemed to be experts on all sides of the issue. And I akin it to people who farm, like our farmers who have animals. And PETA shows up and says these animals are treated poorly. It's always in a a farmer's best interest to treat his animals well. I'll use animals whose fur is maybe used, to make coats, like mink farmers, for example. It's in that farmer's best interest to keep those animals healthy because that's their bread and butter. That's how they make money. So it's in a hunter and a sport shooter's best interest to make sure that things are in order because they want to continue to hunt. They want to continue to sport shoot. So you're exactly right. They need to bring everyone to the table. I've done podcasts with the Canadian National Firearms Association. In fact, their president lives in Norfolk County, and he was in the Ontario legislature when I asked the question of the Solicitor General. And, some of these guys have such a wealth of knowledge, and the police will admit that these gun guys locally, some of these guys who teach the courses and who have been involved in hunting and sport shooting for many years, they know far more than our police know, and the police will admit that.
It's an interesting conversation. You and I could go on all day about it, but I have to let you go to work. I have to let you go, represent Haldeman Norfolk. I think on that, and I know that is a controversial subject, and I know it's not the way we wanted to start 23, but I think it's eye-opening, and I think that's the important part of it. You start a conversation about those things and make sure that it follows through somehow. Thanks for doing this. All the best in 23, eh?
Same to you, Dave, and same to everyone out there listening. Wish you all the best. Take care.